Hey everyone, thank you for joining. We're just going to give it another minute to let people join and then we'll get started. Can you also see that I'm looking at the participant list, or do you only see the title card?
Us?
Yeah,
Only the title card.
okay, nice. I'm never sure what's happening,
Yeah, just the title card.
And then as you hovered over the chat, I saw somebody say hello, but I guess
Oh,
that might
okay.
have
Yeah,
just
that's
been a
the
timing
chat.
thing. Yeah, it's a timing thing.
Long Island.
Okay.
Long Island.
Oh, great. Hi, Jonathan. Yeah, if y'all want to introduce yourselves in the chat, let us know where you're joining us from. We'd love to know. Thanks for joining. We're just going to give it one more minute, I think, to let people in.
Hi, Abby from Seattle.
I'm confusing myself with the screen share. I mean, you'd think after a year and a half on Zoom, I would totally get it, but
You like my TikTok content? Thank you. I appreciate you.
Aww.
See, Naz, we got to get on the TikTok.
Yes.
TikTok. Ooh,
It's the new happening, It's
it
the big thing.
is.
It's the new,
The new.
All right, I think we're just going to get started then. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight or this afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. We're so glad that you're here. My name is Kelly Cobb. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the VP of Giving at Bombas. I have the pleasure of working on all the ways that mission intersects with what Bombas does as a brand and working closely with the homeless community in New York City. And I'm so glad to be able to host this discussion tonight around such a universal topic, love, and the various ways that it intersects with homelessness. If you've attended before, you know that an hour goes by very quickly when we're getting into the complexities of these topics, but we'll continue to have conversations just like these, inviting all of you to be a part of it. This is our 7th conversation in our ongoing speaker series, and we'll continue to host one each month, digging into the many topics that intersect with the topic of homelessness. So we hope that you'll keep coming back to learn with us. And if you haven't joined us before, but are interested in catching up on some of the past topics, have a watch or a listen to our previous conversations, which are posted on the Bombas YouTube channel. In the past, we've had some really great conversations speaking about things like the unique realities of women experiencing homelessness, the topic of food insecurity, sustainability in farming, racial equality and empowerment. Healthcare and homelessness was our topic last month. And our very first topic, an important one, how to talk about homelessness when it feels like it can be an overwhelming conversation. But let's get into tonight's topic. We are talking about love. Love is universally understood, even if it's experienced from many different perspectives. And there are many ways to convey the sentiment of love through our intentions, words, actions. In the best cases, it feels really good and has a tremendously positive effect on the way that we feel about ourselves, the way that we show up in the world. In other cases, love and a perceived sense of love can be damaging and hard to overcome. Tonight, we're going to get into all of those things, and we're speaking with 3 individuals who, and you'll soon see for yourself, bring much love to the work that they do. So I'm very pleased to introduce our 3 speakers tonight. First is Shirley Raynes. She's founder of Beauty to the Streets. Hey y'all, hi Love Muffin, how you doing Pumpkin? These are all familiar words, whether you're in her line at Skid Row in Los Angeles, California, or you've tuned in and caught a glimpse of her on Instagram. Originally, she started serving with another local organization, but quickly found her own calling. Women had started complimenting her on her colored hair, her beautifully done makeup, and lashes. Realizing that these women are still women and were very interested in looking nice, she started bringing out makeup, lashes, and hair dye. With that, Beauty to the Streets was born. The people of Skid Row quickly came to know Shirley. Her cheerful conversations filled with affection and hope. She gained the trust of both men and women, a group which has only grown over time. And she's no stranger to helping people, but didn't realize that her passion would bring her down a path of healing from her own struggles in life. She makes it a point to service the back areas in Skid Row where people don't have access to amenities, even though often small amenities that Skid Row has to offer. Through her service, she's met many beautiful people, gay, straight, transgendered individuals representing all ethnicities. No one has ever turned away. Next, I'm pleased to introduce you to Mark Irwin, who's the Director of Development and Advancement at Ruth Ellis Center. He joined Ruth Ellis Center as Director of Programs in August 2011, and soon after transitioned to Director of Development and Advancement in January of 2013. He's responsible for building strategic relationships within the community, establishing visibility of the center's programs and services, oversees all center communications, provides LGBTQ plus youth proficiency trainings, and the planning, direction, and coordination of all of the development activities, including major fundraising events and special projects. He is pretty much doing it all over there. In his 10 years at Ruth Ellis Center, he's brought significant visibility and resources to the crisis of LGBTQ youth homelessness and the efforts of the center through innovative events, collaborations, and partnerships. Under his leadership, Voices, the center's annual gala, has become widely recognized as a signature LGBTQ event in Detroit and has hosted some really impressive guests such as Wanda Sykes, Lily Tomlin, Margaret Cho, Billy Porter, Jack Antonoff, and Sandra Bernhard, among others. Additionally, he played a lead role in the development of Ruth Ellis Health and Wellness Center, which has been highlighted in national case studies for its innovation and collaboration with the Henry Ford Health System. Previously, he served as the director of the well-known after-school program School of Rock in Minnesota's Twin Cities, serving more than 300 youth and their families. While he was at School of Rock, he helped to establish a comprehensive scholarship fund on which more than 15% of the youth and families of the school now benefit from. Incredible. And also working with him at Ruth Ellis Center is Nazarena Mwakasege Manaya. I'm sorry, Nazarena.
No, that was good. Well done.
She's the Senior Development Associate at Ruth Ellis Center and hails from the proud state of New Jersey. I think we have some New Jersey in the house tonight. Let us know in the chat. She moved to Detroit with her husband in 2013 for them both to attend graduate school. Her commitment to youth, the LGBTQ community, and public health has led her to her current role as Senior Development Associate for the Ruth Ellis Center. And she currently resides in Ann Arbor with her husband and new baby. Okay, enough for me. I would love for our great audience to get to know you three amazing humans a bit more beyond these introductions. And this is a question that I start each of our panels with because so much of where we're at now is thanks to our own individual journeys. I would love for each of you to tell us just a little bit about what got you to where you are now. So let's start with Shirley and then Mark and then Nazarena. Shirley.
Okay, well, my story is tragic, but hey, that's life. I'll be 54 in December. I have a twin sister and I have 6 children. I have 5 living children. When I was in my 20s, I lost my firstborn child 5 days from his 3rd birthday to a really tragic accident. That pretty much shaped and molded my life to where we see it today. I came down with panic and anxiety disorder. I've had just so many emotional problems in life and just trying to cope with this tragic loss that happened basically before I knew who I was, had really got me down some very dark roads and some dark places. Even though I have 5 living children, I just could never seem to overcome that tragedy. So, with the help of my twin sister and just years of self-punishment, I think, and probably survivor's remorse, I decided to find a purpose for my pain. I was like, it has to mean something. This has to be for a reason. I have all of this trauma and all this pain. What am I supposed to do with it? And in my late 40s, my journey to try to figure out what was going on with my life led me to an organization that said, hey, you want to come feed the homeless? And I was like, sure. And when I went out there, I'm like, oh my God, there's a sea of broken people. Like, this is definitely me. And this is where I should be. And, from there, they liked the hair and the makeup. And I know what it felt like to be broken. I know what it felt like to be unseen in this big world. I know what trauma felt like. I know what survivor's remorse felt like. I know what PTSD felt like. And so I found all of that in the street, and it really gave me an outlet to kind of work through my pain, but work with my community at the same time. I felt like I had something to offer. It actually gave me a purpose for my pain, and that purpose led to my passion. So that's why I go so hard, because I feel like, I can't bring my son back. I can't change the things that have happened in my life, but I can now make sense of it because I'm very well trained. I didn't go to school for this, but it was School of Hard Knocks, and I'm very well trained to take care of my community. So that's how I got to where I am.
Thank you so much for sharing
You're
that.
welcome.
So glad you're here. Mark, tell us about how you got to where you are.
So I would say it really started probably when I was 16. I identified as gay, but hadn't come out yet. I was growing up in an area where it wasn't really safe to do so, to come out. And I had an opportunity to attend a performing arts school in Northern Michigan called Interlochen. And I received a scholarship and was super excited. And I remember I originally needed some letters of recommendation from my choir director and orchestra director, and they both refused to do it. And in fact, my orchestra director said, that's just where all the fags go, which was really my cue to say, that's definitely where I want to be. I need to go now. And it was the second day that I was at Interlochen that I came out to my roommate. And I just remember what it felt like to be in a space where I could show up. I could be me. I didn't have to hide anymore. And I thrived. I had an extraordinary experience at Interlochen. And it really showed me that whatever I wanted to do, I had the right to pursue. And so with that, I went on to college and studied audio production engineering, was definitely going to be a rock star for sure. Started doing music supervision and post-production work, specifically sound design for the Food Network and some other channels. And then one of my college professors reached out to me one day and just said, there's this opportunity that's just become available at this after school program that I've been doing some work at, I've been teaching at. They're looking for a director, and I think you'd be perfect for it. And it turned out to be the School of Rock. And the moment I walked into that space, I knew that's exactly where I wanted to be. And it reminded me instantly of my, very first days at Interlochen, where every young person who walks through the door is just a rock star, no matter what, no questions asked. And there were many young people who really struggled in their own public schools and in their own communities, whether it be, from traumatic experiences, or maybe they were on the autism spectrum. But at School of Rock, they were celebrated. And it was really just about, their ability to rock and shred on their guitars and to have a ball. And it was an extraordinary experience for me because it was when I really sort of came full circle. And then when I decided to move back to the Detroit area, I knew that I wanted to continue that work, but I wanted to do it in a space that, I hadn't experienced before, which was nonprofit work and to work with LGBTQ young people, especially. And I discovered the Ruth Ellis Center and fell in love with it and never left. So yeah, that's really sort of how I got here. It's been an extraordinary journey. There's been lots of ups and downs. But I feel incredibly blessed to be a part of this work.
Incredible. Thank you, Mark. Nazarena, let's hear from you.
Such an honor to share something of a digital stage with the three of you. My story, I could say that it starts with Mark. Mark's energy came through the video screen and I was interviewing with him, and I was like, I want to work with that man. But my story, I think, starts when I was around 8. When I was 8 years old, I had the great fortune of going to Tanzania for the first time to meet 95% of my father's family. Pretty much almost everyone is there. And I had this wonderful cousin. Her name was Stella. For some reason or another, obviously I wasn't around as much as like some of my other cousins that live over there because I live in the States. But she took such a shine to me and I absolutely adored her. I just loved playing with her and being around her. And she was just a really wonderful and very loving human being. A couple of months after I returned home, I found out that she had passed away, and my family was very transparent with me. They let me know that she had passed away from AIDS. And it was from then on that I wanted to learn any and everything that I could about HIV/AIDS, how what the impact looked like domestically, why it looked the way that it did in Tanzania and in sub-Saharan Africa. And so that would eventually lead me to public health school in Ann Arbor. And yeah, while there, I, did this internship where I was fortunate enough to return to sub-Saharan Africa. This time I was working in Mozambique, and the target population there were families, actually. And so what was happening is you had a lot of families who were raising their children, medicating them, taking them to doctor visits. A lot of these children had no idea that they were HIV positive. And so I was, my work while I was over there was supporting the creation of a project in which we would help families and guardians and caregivers disclose to these young children that this is what you are actually living with. And, and this is why, you are living your life this way. This is why you have to take, this amount of medication. This is why we are so rigid about X, Y, and Z. And then to sort of take a step back, during my social work internship, I, was working with one of my supervisors. And for some reason or another, he said, I want you to remember this name. He said, I want you to remember Ruth Ellis Center. And I was like, why? What's going on over there? He said, they're doing some incredible work. They're doing work with an HIV population. And I know that that's, the sort of work that you want to get into. Just keep it in mind. And about 4.5, 5 years later, an opportunity would pop up and I would find myself coming back from, I was working like after school. I found a great job in a Catholic healthcare system. I was supporting a lot of people who are a part of various marginalized populations. I found myself doing a lot of work with LGBTQ young people in the area, advocating for them within a Catholic healthcare system. The opportunity popped up to join the center, and I got to meet the wonder that is Mark, and I couldn't stay away. And so for the past 18 months, I've had the great pleasure of working at this incredible organization and working with this wonderful human. And that's part of the reason why I'm with you all today.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And it's so nice to know that with Bombas and Ruth Ellis Center that we've all had the chance to connect. And before we went live, Mark and I were talking about how the last time we saw each other in person was in June 2019, which feels like 100 years ago, but we were together in New York City to celebrate Pride, and can't wait till we can all get back in person to do it again. But speaking of Ruth Ellis Center, which is based in Detroit, Michigan, I would love for you to be able to share a little bit more about the organization. We've heard a little bit so far. Will you tell us more about the incredible place that is Ruth Ellis Center and what it means to bring love into the work that you do? Mark, will you start us off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Ruth Ellis Center was formed just over 22 years ago, and it was in direct response to a young person who identified as gay and had come out to his family, and they immediately and violently rejected him. It was one of those situations where the parents tried to get the siblings to beat the gay out of him. And so obviously it was not a safe environment. He ran away, he was living on the streets, and at 15 years old, really struggled to try to find resources And not even just housing resources for young people, but resources for LGBTQ young people who were experiencing this kind of family rejection. However, this young person had enough courage to reach out to some community leaders in the LGBTQ community and asked for help, told a story and asked for help. And so they too started scanning the community just to see what was out there. And really there was nothing in Detroit at that time. And so they organized a meeting of community members. There were 16 people. It was a combination of educators, attorneys, social workers, healthcare professionals, activists. And they came together in 1999 over Memorial Day weekend just to brainstorm some ideas. And with the limited resources that they had available, they decided to come up with a drop-in center. So just a safe space for LGBTQ youth to access a hot meal, some clean clothes, but most importantly, a space where they could be celebrated for who they are as opposed to be rejected because of it. And they wanted to name it after an extraordinary Black lesbian woman, Detroiter, who opened her home as early as the 1940s as a safe space for the LGBTQ community. And her name is Ruth Ellis. Many of the original founders were dear friends with Ruth. Dr. Kofi, as we fondly call her, is one of the founders of the center, was a wonderful friend of Ruth's, and went to Ruth and said, we really want to create this space, and we really want to name it after somebody who has inspired us, and that's you. And would it be okay to name it the Ruth Ellis Center? And at the time, Ruth was 101, and she just laughed and said, I'm just the oldest lesbian you've ever met. I don't know why you didn't want to name it after me, but that was Ruth, quirky, fierce, amazing. And so they opened the center. Ruth was actually there to cut the ribbon, and she passed away in her sleep about 2 weeks later in 2000. But those founders were correct. The need for resources for LGBTQ youth experiencing homelessness was great, and there were very few. So that drop-in center, which was really only about 500 square feet, was quickly outgrown, and we moved into a new facility in 2006, which provided 10,000 square feet, and we also added a residential facility at that time as well. And it's since grown to add many, many more programs, which maybe I can even let Naz get into that too. But I think what has been so incredible about the work and the space is that the love permeates the space. You can feel it when you walk in, and we've heard that time and time again. And I think, Kelly, you've even met some young people from the center, and just their passion, their resiliency, their creativity, their strength, all of those things inspire us. And I think that approaching the work with that sense of love and just true admiration for the people in this space, whether they're young people accessing services or staff members whose journey brought them here. I think that acknowledging that and being intentional about that is incredibly important. And it's what's allowed us to not only sustain the programs and services, but grow them over the years.
Yeah, and I guess to continue about this sort of wondrous place, a huge draw for me was the Health and Wellness Center. That's a part of the center. I quickly learned when I was working in healthcare that it's not always the most affirming place when you have marginalized and or intersecting identities. And that's very true for the LGBTQ community, and particularly children and young people. And so, it's such a, like adolescence, childhood in general, can be a really weird time. And to be seen holistically can just move mountains for a young person, for anyone, but particularly for a young person. And so, we have a primary healthcare center, and a large reason why we have that is nothing we do here happens without our youth telling us that it needs to be done first. And so, one of the stories that sort of guided us to opening this health and wellness center, aside from the fact that our founders, thought in the very beginning back in 1999 that this was something that was necessary. It was also that, right before we, decided to bring it on board, it was our youth that told us that this was a need that they had. We had 40% of our youth at the time living with HIV and not necessarily being treated for it, and feeling very scared and insecure about participating in, sort of the normal healthcare system. And so having an affirming space to receive healthcare, I can't tell you our young people, per our physicians and our care team that works in the center, our young people are so healthy because they want to hang out with Dr. Mo, who's our chief pediatrician. They want to hang out with Jennifer. They want to hang out with Ali because they are incredible human beings. And they know in that space, they are going to be loved on. And not just, sort of their physical healthcare, but also they can go from their primary healthcare visit through a door that passes by like a kitchen, and they can meet with their therapist like in the same visit. And that therapist and that doctor and that healthcare team all communicate very healthily and very often about each and every one of the young people that they care for. Like there's a very holistic approach. These young people are being seen 100% of who they are, and each portion of their care is informing the other side of it. And when you speak of love, it's not just about, at least for the center, providing, providing this kind of care on site. It's about going back to those sort of systems of care, whether it be child welfare or like a healthcare institution itself, and saying, if you want to learn how to be affirming to this population, like we have some young people, we've done some serious learning, we've done some real research, this is how you go about doing that, right? So we actually have something called the Ruth Ellis Institute, and it's sort of our education and training arm. So like, if you want to be loved on, it's not just happening on site, it's happening with each and every entity that has reached out or sought out, how do we do this better? How do we take care of this population better? And so a lot of that informs so much of what we do. We have the young people, they tell us what to do. We tell them what kind of services we have, and they're incredibly creative people. They'll like, well, what about this? And what about that? Let's figure it out together. We may not have it today. That doesn't mean that we can't write a grant or fundraise appropriately to make sure that this need that you're telling us about is met. And I can truthfully say, I don't know that I've ever worked in a more loving space. I don't leave this building, obviously, like, this is pre-pandemic at this point, but I usually don't leave this building without a minimum of about 3 or 4 hugs and some long conversations about how much we've missed and how much we love one another. And when we're going to have, an extra 15 minutes to have the same conversation again. It's a very, an incredibly loving space. And I wish everyone had a workplace where, if they wanted to experience that they could have those experiences.
That's just so special. And I mean, first, it's incredible how affirming and accessible and empowering you've been able to make holistic care and centralizing it in such an important way. And I think at Bombas, we're so lucky to share similar vibes of having the space to love and miss one another. And we certainly miss being together in the office. So I feel equally lucky in that way, and hope others get to experience a similar workplace environment. I think it's rare, but it's nice to see how it's starting to change. And Shirley, I want to hear from you. You've founded such an inspiring organization in Los Angeles. Just a glance at your Instagram page, it's so clear that you bring so much love to the work that you do. Will you tell us a bit more about Beauty to the Streets and why infusing love into the services that you offer to folks on Skid Row is so important?
I think Beauty to the Streets, I think I'm going on my 6th year out there helping the community. And I believe we're going on 4 years of being Beauty to the Streets. And basically, when I went out to feed with this organization, I'm a person who believes in zombies. I walk walked around my whole life, taking care of my body, but never my spirit. I had all this emotional pain and trauma, and I was like walking in my sleep. I was like basically a zombie. And when I went out there to feed with an organization, that's one thing I noticed, that there were just a lot of people who were just walking around in a zombified mode. And one of the things I wanted to do was not just feed the body, but feed the spirit as well, because without the spirit, the body is just, it's empty. So I wanted to find a way to nurture both of those things. And I pretty much knew the things that I had been lacking in life, the things that I had wanted, and I wanted to return that. And when I was feeding, everyone was so interested in my hair and my makeup and my eyelashes. And I started with the LGBTQ community because they all were in the back streets of Los Angeles, because to go into Skid Row is very dangerous for them. So, I would be like, oh, you want some eyelashes? I can bring you some eyelashes. I'll bring you hair color. And so I started bringing hair color. I started doing their hair. And then they started to tell me how, did I have any clothing? And I'm like, sure, I'll bring you some dresses and some things I have in my closet. And they began to tell me how people would bring clothing out, but they wouldn't give the male female clothing. Like, even being homeless, society was still trying to say what we're going to give you and how you should dress. And I thought, well, that's deplorable. I mean, who says that? I'm like, well, I'll just get it myself for you. I'll bring you things myself, And I realized quickly that this was a community that lacked a lot of love. People put food in a bag, people gave them things, but I couldn't provide housing for them. I couldn't get them off the streets, but I realized that none of them, like, even when it came to hair color and lipstick, I was like, well, which one do you want? They're like, it doesn't matter. I'm so grateful to get anything. I'm like, well, wait, you realize that you still have choices, right? And I wanted my nonprofit to be about choices and to be empowering. And that's why we run it the way we do. I can't help you with the choices of where you sleep or where you use the bathroom, but I can allow you to make choices about what color you want your hair. I can give you clothing. What kind of clothing do you want? What kind of eyelashes? What kind of earrings and things like that you want. And we quickly grew. People started calling me the makeup lady. I still wasn't a nonprofit at this time. I was just an individual out there working in a medical field, 26 years as a medical biller, but I was also out there serving my community. And through social media and Instagram, people started following my journey because I wanted to document it. I was like, oh my God, this is deplorable. Like, people shouldn't live like this. And I'm from Compton. I'm from the streets. So I'm like, look, I can show you better than I can tell you, because I'm a stranger. You don't have to believe anything that I say, but I can show you what's going on with some of our vets, what's going on with our elderly, what's going on with our LGBTQ community. These elderly people should be living their golden years full of love, and they're on the streets hungry. There's no medical care. There's no dental care. There was so much lacking. I thought, let me show this. And as I was showing it, people started following me, and one lady started following me, was Dana Cisneros, and she was a lawyer. She is a lawyer, and for my 50th birthday, she gifted me a nonprofit status, because she said, I think you should have this. I think you're going to need this. You're doing a lot of good work. And I'm like, okay, girl, I'll take it, because my mama told me don't never turn down nothing free. I didn't know what a nonprofit was, but I knew not to turn down nothing free, and then, we kind of grew to where we are. And people know us out there. They know us as the organization that provides choices. I love up on them. They are my family. I dated that community for a very long time. I spent the time dating them to get to know what they like, what they don't like, what they want, what their pain is, what their trauma is, what their baggage is. And after I dated them, I fell in love with them, and I married that community. And I vowed to never leave that community. Even during the pandemic, we never once took time off during the pandemic, because it's not an option. This is for better and for worse. And right now we're in the worst stage. And we buried some of the people on the street, but I remember the last encounters with them were encounters of feeling loved upon and hugged, and, walking and holding their hand and asking how their day went, and just showering with them with that, because they need that, because they're a community that's not seen. People walk by and don't see them. The city doesn't care about them. They're to people, it's a marginalized community. And to them, they feel like they've done something wrong to be there. And this narrative that's been attached to them is absolutely incorrect. But the hardest part is that they've begun to believe the narrative. They've begun to see themselves as unworthy of being loved. And I'm like, oh, no way, baby. Having a house or lack thereof does not make one lovable or non-lovable. It's the character. And there are some amazing people in the street. We've got young LGBTQ kids because the father said, no son of mine will be in this house and wear a dress. So now this kid is thrown out there in the street. So I become mom. They call me mom, and I call them daughter or son. So I bring the young kids in, and it's a hard position to be in, but I know that with all that I went through in my life, a little love would have went a long way. I didn't get it. I didn't get what I needed, but a little love would have went a long way. So I make sure that my nonprofit, my volunteers, we give back. We give that to our community. And now every Saturday, our numbers are up to 500 people in line. We feed 500 people, give them blankets, sleeping bags, tents. We have a full chef that comes out, barbecues on the spot. I raise money for it. Every Tuesday, like tomorrow, I go out and I feed out of my car. Another 250 is called Tuesday Feed, where they can walk up to my car window, get some honey buns, get some love, tell me how their day is going, tell me if they need anything special for Saturday, and we start that whole routine again. So no matter what happens to them during the week, they know that somebody is going to come that loves them, that wants to provide things for them, and wants to just be there for them as a support system. And a lot of them got housing. I do new apartment shopping trips. I go to Walmart. I fill their houses. They still come out to us and tell us that they're doing well. And we've bonded and formed a great family. We're a family. We are a family. We're a dysfunctional family. We fight. I put them in their place, but we are a family, and I love them so very much, and they know that. And that's kind of what Beauty to the Streets is. It's bringing beauty right to where it's at. We want to meet them where they're at. You know, people have offered me a building, and I don't want a building. I want to go where my community is. If they're on the corner, I'm going to be on the corner. You know, give the building to them, let them live in the building, but I want to meet them where they're at with the things that they need. And that's why we call it Beauty to the Streets, because that's all we can bring out there.
Wow. Shirley, my goodness. And I'm just thinking about you being given the gift of the nonprofit for your birthday gift, but how truly it is a gift for every single person that you get to interact with and show love to. 500 people every week. That's incredible. There's so much to get into in this, and we're going to come back to some of the aspects that you mentioned, particularly the importance of meeting someone where they're at. But first, I want to come back to Nazarena and Mark and just talk a little bit more about in the work that you all are doing. What does a loving approach mean to you as it relates to the interactions and support services? Why is it so important to make someone, feel good and feel better as it relates to helping them move past the barriers that they might be facing?
So I think it's a really great question. And I think that Shirley really hit on a lot of this, which is that people want to feel seen and heard. And you don't often experience that when you are accessing social services. So when you come into spaces like Ruth Ellis Center, where there is no judgment and you really are listened to, as Naz said, we develop programs based on the needs of the young people as they share them with us. It's how we were established. A young person shared their story and told us about what they needed, what would make an impact in their lives. And so coming to the work with the approach of I'm here for you, not the other way around, is the first thing. The other thing that I would also say, which Shirley also talked about, which is we are a dysfunctional family too. It's about that honesty, that openness, that transparency, having young people be a part of the decision-making process, having them informed about what's happening at the center at all times and allowing them to have a seat at the table is important. But I also think that one of the things that really sets Ruth Ellis Center apart in terms of how we approach the work is not demonizing people. So families, when families reject their children, there's usually some underlying cause there, and what we found, historically is fear. A lot of it stems from fear, and organizations have really sort of demonized families in the past for rejecting their children, which results in absolutely no chance whatsoever of having an open dialogue and exploring possibilities and how they might be able to support their children down the road or begin to understand their child's sexual orientation or gender identity and expression in a way that they hadn't considered in the past. And I think that is really what separates the work here at the center. We established a family preservation program in partnership with Child Protective Services so that when the state of Michigan investigates allegations of abuse and neglect, and they identify rejecting behaviors based on the child's sexual orientation or gender identity, rather than immediately removing the child from the home, they engage with Ellis Center, and we go into the home and work with the family for up to 13 months with the goal of keeping the family together. We don't need more LGBTQ young people in foster care. We don't need more LGBTQ young people in the juvenile justice system. And we certainly don't need more living on the streets experiencing homelessness, because we know what happens. So if we can learn to love, learn to meet people where they are, and learn to find some commonality, so that we can really truly have an impact in our community and in the lives of these young people. That's the most important thing that we can do in this work. And it translates even to major systems of care, as Nazarena said with the Institute. There are some issues with foster care. We all know it throughout the nation. There are issues with the healthcare systems. There are issues with juvenile justice. But if we just stand on the outside and sort of criticize and demonize, we're not going to make any progress. And so even meeting those major systems with love and respect and understanding allows us, at least at Ruth Ellis Center, to have the conversation. And what that ultimately means is that we're invited to the table, and then that's where change takes place. And so that's really how we've always really approached the work. And I think it's been a huge benefit to the organization, and especially to the young people. The last thing I would say about that too is, once a young person comes to the center, they're always part of the Ruth Ellis Center family. I remember the very first young person I met, the very first day I walked through that front door. And I can share this because she said it was okay, but her name is Christina, and the time 16-year-old trans Black young lady. And she said, "Mr. Irwin, can I ask you a question? Are you a homosexual?" And I said, "Oh Lord, what did I get myself into?" And now, I mean, Christina and I still talk usually every other week. She's since gotten her graduate degree. She went into nonprofit administration. I'm going to be competing with her for my job at some point, which is absolutely okay. That's the goal. That's the point. And a young person can achieve really incredible things when they have somebody in their life that is willing to be there and consistently be an ear and to be the support that they need, whatever that looks like. And that's how we've always approached it. All right, Naz, your turn.
So one space that Mark didn't talk about also that we participate closely in, we actually have programs that are merged with Detroit Public Schools. We know how difficult school can be, again, when you are, have a marginalized identity, right? And so literally meeting children where they're at, which is school, which is where many of them spend the majority of their time, right? And for this space, like, that's how love comes through, right? Like, we know that, like, this is what you're going through. You're going to need additional support. School can already be a very traumatic environment as it is, without any sort of additional layers. And so that is why we participate in school. It's also a reason why, like, the program that Mark spoke of earlier, the Family Acceptance Project, is so important. We have a lot of our supporters, when they hear these stories of these families rejecting their children, they react quite viscerally. They're like, "Oh, how could you do something like that?" And granted, I will never say there absolutely are bigots out there, absolutely. But a lot of, once you get to sort of, when you dig out sort of the story and what's going on with a lot of these families, for many of them, it comes down to, "I am so scared for my child. I do not share this identity. I literally have no idea how I am going to support them. I don't have the language. Like, I don't know how to protect them from other people in the family or the community." Like, and if those resources were sort of like in the mainstream, we probably wouldn't see what we're seeing amongst, the rates of homelessness that are experienced by LGBTQ young people. It's because a lot of that is not normalized. But if it was, like, I mean, and my reason for this work, and I would hope for a lot of people in nonprofit, is to work yourself out of a job. I would love for the world to get to a space where a child doesn't have to come out. No one has to come out. They can just be who they are. And if they would like to label themselves, you can absolutely do that. But it shouldn't necessarily be a necessity. But here we are. Here we are. And since we are here, this is how we're going to support you. You tell us what you need. we'll meet halfway and then go above and beyond once we figure it all out.
Absolutely. It's such a beautiful approach. And I love how you both, Mark and Nazarena, made such an important point of not demonizing family members who may have their own barriers to move past. I think that is such an initial feeling, that visceral reaction to respond that way. And I'm so impressed with the work that you both do at Ruth Ellis Center to really focus on that family reunification and understanding. And I want to break this down just a little bit more, to dig a little bit deeper into love and the way that we experience it and how it can mean different things to each of us. And knowing that not all relationships perceived as loving relationships are healthy or good for us. Some folks may not have had a choice in their relationship, like a child parent relationship, that might not be the healthiest form of love. And as adults, our inclinations and choices are often influenced by what we experienced at a younger age. Sometimes we love things that don't and can't love us back. So how do you help individuals feel empowered to discern between love that supports them and love that ultimately does not? And how does that all relate to one's ability to heal? Shirley, could we start with you?
Jeez, that's probably the story of my life. I think, gosh, I think when I approached the community, I think about my life, because I didn't have love. I didn't grow up with a supportive mom at all. My supportive family members are all dead and gone. And even today, being used to the streets, I still don't get that love from my mom. But one of the approaches I take with my community is that let's just establish right away it's okay to not be okay. Let's just establish that right away. Like, you're not being taken care of by people. Say you're an angel. Actually, if I was a biblical character, I'd be the woman at the well. I'm not an angel. I'm a mess. So let's establish that already. Being very transparent with them. Talking about my journey with Prozac and being very accepting of them. But at the same time, holding them accountable to remove the crutches that they walk on in life. I encourage people to unpack their bags. I mean, there's trauma there, there's been pain there. It's hard to love. It was hard for them to love me. I worked very hard to break down a lot of those protective walls that they have built up. And I see that. But and I know the pain and the trauma that they've been through, as I've been through pain and trauma. But I try to express to them love is a choice, and it's not going to always work out in your favor, but it doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean you don't give your all. It doesn't mean you take a chance, even on yourself. I mean, talk about love. I'm just trying to get them to absolutely love themselves, because no one else loved them. And I can tell you that it's a lot of work, because I've had to do it. And we self-medicate. There's a lot of drug addiction out there. There's a lot of alcoholism out there. It's not what led to homelessness. It's what helps them cope with the life of being homeless. It's getting the woman to trust me when I want to wash her hair, because the last touches she's had in Skid Row have been non-consensual touches. So it's getting her to understand that there is going to be a friendly touch, and this is just a chapter in your life. And it's very hard to create that balance for them, because I don't see them just in the streets. I see them in their new life that they're going to have. And I wonder, will the trauma from this life stop you from being touched by the man who loves you? How can we work on that? And everyone's not bad. And how can you love yourself? And, part of that is me accepting who they are as well. They come to me drunk. They come to me high. I do not lecture. I care, but I do not lecture. I understand that drugs and alcohol is just a Band-Aid that you're throwing on this wound, because you don't have the things that you need in the streets, So I think I pour a lot of love into them, and I want them to understand that no matter what makes you lovable is that you're a human being, not that you're perfect, not that you're flawed. You're lovable because you are. You know what I mean? And to get them to understand that. And I feel like there's a lot of, affection that goes into it. Even with COVID, I got to place a hand on the shoulder. I got to give somebody some touch. Physical touch is just so very important to get them to love themselves, and to get them to understand that other people love them. So it's quite a dynamic. I don't have all the answers for it, but I think that what we're doing, one of the things is I started telling them I love them, because I do love them. And nobody ever said it back for years. I'm like, that's all right. I'm used to that. I don't have men mistreat me. I got this one in the bag. You know what I mean? And now it's just like, if I go to drive up, they're like, Miss Shirley, I'm like, what? love you. I'm like, oh, heck, okay, boo, love you too. And then I get in my car and I cry like a baby. Oh my God, they said they love me. Getting them to express that over again, it's so important. So now not a day goes by, I get showered with so much love out there. They give it back. And it took years to work for it. And that's one thing you have to be patient with, is the time it's going to take. You're dealing with a broken community. It took years for them to repeat the words, but you just don't give up. Love is consistent. Love is not judgmental. Love takes its time. And that's what we have to do with our community. Take our time. And then they begin to return that love to others, starting with their self.
Which has to make you feel so good. I mean, just knowing that amount of time that it takes to gain that trust, and that you've never stopped loving on this community, and to be able to see it start to come back because they're loving themselves is so beautiful. And I love that unpack your bags. I think that's so key. Nazarena and Mark, do you have anything that you want to add to this?
I would add that, because we're working with young people, in many cases, they've never even really had conversations with anyone about what is love, what does love look like. And so one of the exercises that we do at the center with young people is we actually make a grid. And so we ask a series of questions. So what would be your ideal first date? And then, they write down, dinner, movie, or, whatever it is that they want to do. And then the next one is, okay, let's get into the super superficial stuff, like tall, short, long hair, short hair. What do you want? What are you looking for? And then we go into, okay, what kind of values do you want that person to have and to show up with in your relationship? Trust, being trustworthy, strong sense of self, compassionate, empathetic, those kinds of things. And then the next one is, how do you want them to interact with your family or your community or your social circle, your friends? Then the next one is, what kind of posts are you going to put about them on social media? And what kind of posts do you hope they'll put about you on social media? And then the last question really is, okay, so they've brought all of these things. What are you going to bring? What are you going to bring to that relationship? What are your strengths? Where are your values? And it's just seeing young people and their eyes just sort of like open up, like, holy crap, I never even really thought about those things, right? I don't even know that all of us ever really thought about those things. But it's so incredibly important to write it down, to make that list. These are the things, Dr. Stacy, who's one of our directors here at the center, always says, make a list of 10 things. And if they pop up with 7 of them, you're good to go. But it's the truth, and hold people accountable for what you want and what you deserve. And then also know your worth and what you're bringing to that relationship as well.
That's such a powerful exercise. Maybe you could send it over to all of us too. Nazarena, do you want to add anything to that?
I just wanted to share, in terms of my interactions with our young people, I do experience a lot of love from, friends and my, my family. And so, sharing is caring. And I just pour into the young people as much as I can. We have a lot of incredible people, like young people. Many of them have transitioned into staff positions. And I am always the first one to tell them to take a break. If you need vacation, take a vacation. If you need to turn off your phone, turn off your phone. The work will be here. We love you. We don't want you to burn out. Life is hard enough as it is. Like, this does not have to be, I don't want for you to get into a habit where you think, work is struggle and life is a struggle. And everything you do, it has to be a constant grind. Like, we love you for who you are. We want you to be happy. We want you to feel fulfilled. And I hope that sort of the way that I live my life and the way that I structure my work life is somehow mirroring, so they know. And they catch me too. Sometimes they catch me slipping, like, why are you sending emails at 4 a.m.? And it's like, well, I was up because I have a 4-month-old, but they're like, what about sleep? We're mentoring each other. It's never a one-way thing either. You know, like my young people and the younger members of our staff, we're mentoring and loving on each other. We're pouring into each other and making sure that we're holding each other accountable, because if you're gonna, if anyone's gonna love you, you need to first love yourself. And loving yourself is so crucial to those other relationships, especially if they're going to be positive relationships, if they're going to be the sort of things that help you progress in a very positive way. You really do need to love yourself. You really need to know who you are and where you're at, and doing everything in my power to facilitate that, not only for myself, but all of the people within the center, all parts of staff, is really essential to how work gets done in this space. We just pour into each other.
You know, I'm laughing to myself because one of the first questions that I had planned to ask you all to make a point is if love is a luxury or a necessity, because I think a lot of folks actually think it's a luxury and not a necessity. But the answer is obviously so clear, and you've all done such a beautiful job of illustrating just how necessary love is. There's no debating it. And I want to end on, or already out of time, which I can't believe, but I want to end on a question that can perhaps help our audience who are interested in interacting or understanding how to best offer the sentiment of love to those around them in a way that's uplifting and encouraging. And I know from my experience firsthand in interacting with individuals experiencing street homelessness in New York, just how powerful it is to offer a hello, a spirited hello, a smile, you know, when they're not wearing masks, and maybe learn a person's name and be able to greet them by name, and how just a simple act of choosing to love and offer a loving greeting can go a long way. What else can we do? What's the best way to help love on someone in a perhaps very drive-by setting? You know, if we're not getting the chance to spend a lot of time, how can we best impart that? Mark, do you want to start?
I mean, little things, making eye contact, first and foremost. Don't pretend somebody doesn't exist. That's one of the worst things that you can do to somebody. I think using language like that's not a homeless person. That's a person who's experiencing homelessness. It could happen to any one of us at any given point in our lives over circumstances that we have literally no control over. So first and foremost, acknowledging that. But little things like here in Michigan, and we're talking earlier before the panel started about how hot it's been in Michigan, but in the winter, it also gets really, really cold. And I keep the disposable hand warmers and feet warmers in my truck. And when I'm driving on an underpass and there's individuals experiencing homelessness and sheltering under those underpasses, I'll hand out those disposable hand warmers and feet warmers, because when it's minus 20 degrees, those disposable hand warmers can literally save lives.
I love that. Shirley?
I would definitely piggyback on what he said, like eye contact, seeing them, you know, acknowledgement. You can't walk past someone who's visibly there. Small things. If I go into Starbucks and I see someone on the outside, I ask them, do they want something? Grabbing them a cup of coffee, you know, be taking into consideration the weather, the element, the conditions in which we have. And then another big thing is to not taking anything personally. You know, their anger is misdirected a lot of times. And if they get mad at me, if they throw something at me, if they don't want their help, I still give them a loving greeting as I depart. Okay, Queen, take care. I hope you have a great day. Okay, King, take care. I hope you have a great day. Because I have to understand there's a lot that's going on in that split second. I cannot take it personally. So if that's all you have and they're rejecting something from you, still depart with love and kind words.
Yes, that is such an important point, is remembering it isn't about us, and the best that we can do is offer with love. Okay, Naz, close this out. What do you got?
I'm really thinking about, I guess, sort of within my network, whether it be like, you know, social media. I haven't been home in a while. You know, it's been I've been living in Michigan 8 years as of yesterday. And sometimes, sometimes every now and then I'll see a post or I'll do a post or I'll just be like, hey, everybody, how are you? And you'd be surprised to know, especially when people know you, I'm a big talker. So when people know you, they might respond, I'm not doing so great, or I'm doing really well, and I miss you, and how are you? You don't know what you're doing for somebody's day when you ask, how are you? And you actually sit there and listen. Don't just do the formality, like, okay, everything's fine, da, da, da. No, one of these days, somebody's going to hit you with something real heavy. And it's just going to be really important for you to sort of sit with it and let them get it out. And that is a showing of love. Like listening, really actively listening is how you display love for someone. Whether it be on social media, whether it be, someone that you don't know who's really looking like they're having a hard day. You could literally be saving someone's life. Asking a question like that, and just keeping that in mind.
Thank you. I think it often does tend to be the simplest things, and we try to overthink it and feel like the only way we can really help is when we're thinking big. But if we boil it down to those, the human interactions, that's where the love is. And I know we're over time, so thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Thank you to our incredible speaker panel. I love you all. I'm so grateful for all the love that you give to the folks that get the pleasure of interacting with you every day. And I hope that y'all join us again next month on July 26th. We'll be having another conversation, so stay tuned for more info. And thank you. I hope everyone goes out with some love tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.